Well, welcome to 284 Media's Just for the Record. I am your host, Kamal Haynes, and today I will be interviewing Mr. Stacy Buddha Mehta, MBE. He is Executive Director at YEP, the BVI Youth Empowerment Project, and will be contesting the upcoming general election under the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement political party as an at-large candidate. Well, on today's episode, we will be asking Mr. Mehta some of the tough questions that need answers. But stay tuned right after this break.
There are many ways to enjoy life, like so many ways to count on popular.
Rashford made it. Manchester United have come from behind to lead.
At home or on the go, watch CCT Live. Download our app and carry your favorite TV shows, news, or live sports anywhere you go. Visit cctbvi.com/live, select your package, and tune in.
We now return with more Just for the Record. Well, welcome back, viewers. As mentioned prior to the break, joining me on Just for the Record is Mr. Stacy Mehta, who will be contesting the upcoming general election under the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement political party as an at-large candidate. Well, welcome, Stacy.
Thanks for having me, Kamal.
Well, thank you for joining us on Just for the Record. I want to jump straight into the questions. Firstly, walk me through your academic training and professional career.
Okay, so I went to the St. George's Primary School. I like to start from the beginning, right? And then I went to BVI High School, which became Elmore Stout High School. I graduated in '94, and I became a trainee teacher at the Altius Catholic Primary School. My first year there, I was awarded Teacher of the Year at the age of 16. And eventually I was able to get a government scholarship. I went to the University of the Virgin Islands, graduated magna cum laude, started my graduate degree there as well. And I finished that graduate degree in 2004 while teaching at the Ebenezer Thomas Primary School. I need to repeat all that.
Not really, you continue.
Just continue?
Yeah.
So what happened is when I returned, I came back to the Altius Catholic Primary School. I worked there for 2 years, went to the Ebenezer Thomas Primary, and I finished my graduate studies there in 2004. So I have a graduate degree in educational leadership and administration. Mm-hmm. Thereafter, I left to pilot the Youth Empowerment Project, which started in 2005 in terms of construction, completed in 2007. I've been the executive director there now for 18 years. And we've served, I think, close to 8,000 children. I've been on the National Drug Advisory Council. I've been a youth assessor in the Magistrates Court for Youth Court. I've sat on the Educational Advisory Council. I've been on other nonprofit boards, and I teach swimming, I teach scuba diving, and other things. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. And what would you say is your purpose in this life?
So simply put, for me right now, I believe in planting trees that I will not shade under. So a lot of persons in our community or in this world benefit from things that others do. So I believe, God put me here on this earth to plant trees or to help young people or help people in general, so that later on there are things for them to be able to live a life with. Mm-hmm. That I may or may not be here to see it, but my purpose in life is not self-driven.
Okay. And I asked that question because I want to know, and I guess the viewers want to know as well, how does your purpose and being a politician align?
So I'm an educator by heart. I believe in young people, and I also believe in us seniors, because eventually I hope God allows me to become a senior on this earth. I think when children are born, those who came before them have an onus in order to try to guide them and nurture them. That a village raise a child is very important to me, because I was raised in Longbush. I was raised in different parts of the BVI, and I understand the importance of having people in your corner that can direct you and show you what you need to, not just your virtues and your principles, but also tell you this is the door maybe you should consider going through. And if you walk through the door and it doesn't work out, maybe they can help you find another door to walk through. So even as an educator and as a youth development professional, youth worker, I find my purpose is to direct young people in ways that can help their doors be open for them. As a candidate, what I've realized is that opportunities in the BVI have been held for some, and for some people that just don't know where to go to get things done. And over the last 18, 20 years, I've tried my best to make sure that is done. I should say 30 years, because if you count the 10 years before when I was a teacher, then that would add into it. But for those who are asking or wondering, I want to have or try to be more instrumental in allowing people to be able to see that things are possible. I've sat in the background for a very long time and watched things in our society, especially in our education system and in youth development, that I would have liked to have seen happen. I've asked, I've tried to champion those causes, but I haven't been sitting in a position to help make the decision that allows them to happen. And that's why I'm stepping in, hoping to be sitting in a position where I can try to make those things happen. I can be a catalyst to make those things happen.
Okay, great. And why should the people elect you as an at-large representative?
So I've lived all over the BVI in terms of TERRITORIAL, right? I am a proponent of the at-large system. I think everyone in our society should have the right to vote and choose who they would like to be their leaders. I would eventually like to see that at-large system move to the point where you can elect individual ministers and even the premier and the deputy premier at a territory level. I chose to run at large because I wanted to give everyone the opportunity to look at me, to choose me. And then at the end of the day, I would have been a decision that the territory itself made by majority. Therefore, I am responsible to the territory as a majority.
And what are your professional plans if you are not elected?
So if I'm not elected, I am going to continue to do the work I'm doing at YEP, first and foremost. The expansion of YEP was supposed to be something that started when we started in 2007, but successive governments have never signed on to the expansion of YEP. We do have some plans right now that should be coming into motion, hopefully in the next couple of months, if everything goes well. And I'm going to continue to work there. I'm also thinking about the possibility of getting some young people together and possibly creating a group that lobbies more towards our government to try to get the change that they would want. I've heard a lot of young persons say that the choices this election and even previous elections are not motivating to them. They feel like they're picking the lesser of two evils. And as a voter as well, I understand how that can be. So this is one of the reasons I put myself forward. I am mindful of the fact that we need to develop new leaders in our country. And there are pointed ways that we can do that through programming that will allow us to hopefully have new batches of leaders, leaders that have ethics, leaders that have country at first, at the foremost of their minds. So I'm not going to fade into the background. I'll continue the youth development work that I have been doing.
So tell me about a challenge you faced, a mistake you have made, or a time you have failed, and how you dealt with it.
A mistake, something I've failed at. I think for me, if I'm being very personal, weight loss has been one of the most challenging things for me. And I think for those who've seen me lately, I've been trying my best to walk, to run, to get things done. So discipline is very important. And I found myself 3 years ago saying to myself, you should go back to the things that you wanted to do. And those things that are difficult, you should make them more of a routine. So eating right, exercising, even I got into Taekwondo, my scuba diving now, I did that when I was in high school, my last year in high school. And it took me nearly 30 years to go back to it. So I would say difficult has been believing in myself enough to force myself to do the uncomfortable. And by doing the uncomfortable, it makes me a better person. So even I would also say stepping into the public limelight now as a very private person and saying, this is who I am, has never been something that I've done. I've always found myself speaking about other people, encouraging other people, and telling them to step into their light and do what they need to do.
Okay. And some people have criticized today's politicians as only seeking leadership for personal and often financial benefits. What is your view on that statement? We'll be right back with more Just for the Record after this short break.
Yo, everything good, Dad?
Aye. This thing got me one way, Daddy.
What you mean?
Ever since I hook up with this thing, I can't eat, I can't sleep. This is the first thing I touch it when I reach home.
What you really? Hey, this ain't like you,
Dad, this thing got me staying home, keeping out of trouble me.
Wow. What your name is?
Shit. I talking about my CCT life.
Don't worry about missing your favorite series, sports, news, and local programming. Come to CCT today and sign up for CCT Live to access over 80 channels. CCT Live. Bring it home.
1 month free trial turn into 5. 5 months turn into, well, I huff. I watching ball. I been watching football. Dad, Nickelodeon, Paw Patrol. I am hooked. Hook, I tell you.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.
We now return with more just for the record. And some people have criticized today's politicians as only seeking leadership for personal and often financial benefits. What is your view on that statement?
I think everyone has the right to have that opinion, because I think opinions are based off of experience. This is what we have experienced. This is what we've seen throughout the world. But Kamal, we can't walk through life expecting negative and expecting things to be hopeless. As a people, as an individual, we have to walk with hope. We have to show our ability to be vulnerable and put our trust in someone or in something. So I'm asking the public, be hopeful, ask for a change, believe in a change, and hold people more accountable, not just fade into the background. Be vocal, more vocal about what is not for you or what you're not satisfied with.
Okay. And if elected, what would your first few months in office look like?
So I've heard people talk about, when you get elected, what would you do? And I guess that's in a nutshell what you're asking me. It's a new job. I think first and foremost, orientation, finding out where we're at as a people, as a government, whichever side I sit on. And I want to say publicly that whomever is elected, if I am elected, I'm working with them, because those are the persons that the government chose, or the people chose, I should say. So for the first few months, I would like to know what's going on. Take a look at the room that I'm in, where the furniture is situated, what was planned, and if it's something that is ongoing and it makes sense, don't change it. Follow it through, allow it to work, and then make adjustments where are necessary. For me, I don't think every decision made by everyone is a negative decision. I think we need to wait and see where it is and then decide if that needs to happen. There are priority areas for me, like education. We haven't had a national education review since 1980. And when you talk about a review, you're talking about the entire system. You're looking at the resources, human resources, the teachers, the principals, you're looking at the curriculum, you're looking at infrastructure, you're looking at how materials are used, how are we getting dollar for value, what is going in and what is coming out. UNESCO has done those things in St. Kitts and other countries. And I've been trying to push to have the BVI do one. It has been in our budget twice now, I think this year and last year, and it hasn't materialized. So for me, I think gathering information, for the first couple of months, gathering information, if it means for me finding out from our children especially and our teachers in that system, or youth workers, sports clubs, people in the tourist sector, wherever I may have to find myself sitting, find out what people really want, get solutions from them, and find out why these things have never been put into action. And if they're feasible, well, let's do it.
And in terms of, is there any specific area of focus that you will be seeking to manage and resolve if elected? So,
as I said before, education. The BVI government spent nearly $80,000 according to the records on my education. And I'm an educator by training, right? I have my bachelor's in elementary education. My master's, as I said, is in educational administration. So the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, and Youth Affairs is what I would like to make an impact in, also within the environment. Our after-school programs in the territory were ended, I think, in 2014 when our national youth policy changed, and the age of a child was now defined, age of a youth was now defined as 15 to 29. That policy, it has expired and it needs to be updated to reflect the age of a child being under the age of 15. So from basically birth to whether it's 25, 29, so that we can start having those after-school programs that we've lost because our children need these things. Within our schools, there are a lot of things that need to be done. And I believe our teachers, those on the ground, they know what needs to be done. Our community service programs that we have for children, it needs to include apprenticeship programs, compensation for teachers, teacher morale, 360-degree evaluations. There are a lot of things that have been sitting on the shelf for so many years that have just not materialized in education, in youth, in sports. A lot of our athletes have been screaming for the attention they need. A lot of the clubs in the BVI do phenomenal work, but they're not being supported in the ways that they've been asking for. So let's find out why they haven't been supported and let's address it.
Okay, you spoke about education, and obviously your passion for education, your experience and expertise in education. Let's turn the tables a little bit. Still on education, but we do know as of recent there have been more news coming out of these high schools in particular as it relates to violence in secondary schools or high schools and in the education system. if elected, how would you seek to address the present violence and bullying that is seen in schools?
So I think the government for the years have been working on a discipline policy. That policy needs to be a living policy. It needs to be something that's bought in by the teachers, the parents, the students, everyone collectively, including the community. If I was working within that, I think a presence more from the community is necessary within the school, and I think that presence needs to come from whomever are the elected officials. It's time to visit the schools as much as possible. Time to reach out and let these young people know that you're interested in their well-being. If they're having a good day, if a week has gone without an incident, that's something to be celebrated. I think there are a lot of positive things happening in our public schools, especially our secondary school. We need to let the public know that there are more good stories, more positive stories than negative stories. And we need to put our money where our mouth is, but more importantly, we need to put our actions where our mouth is. We can't lead from behind. We have to lead right exactly there where the issue is.
And what is your take as it relates to transparency and accountability, especially in this current climate that we are in the BVI?
So I've been running a nonprofit for 18 years now, right? Being transparent is very important because people give you money in order to pay the bills. You have to be able to answer them and tell them where their money has gone. Otherwise, they won't fund you again. When you work in a nonprofit, you're not selling a product or a service. You're basically dependent upon people believing in what you're doing and giving to you. So transparency and accountability is very important. They can't just be words. They have to be something that makes sense. I know as a voter, I've voted for government in the sunshine. I've voted for unconventional government, and I haven't been satisfied. And I think these buzzwords that we use sometimes, you know, they can be realized. Other countries in the world, New Zealand and other countries, they've evolved to where they need to be. And, you know, I think we can do the same.
And I asked that particular question because oftentimes, as you would say, we see political candidates being as open as possible prior to elections, and after being elected, it's very difficult to get through to them. So should you be elected as minister or at-large representative, and should you have the Ministry of Education's portfolio, would you be as accessible to the media, for example, and the public, general public, or the media works on behalf of the public, as it relates to getting information? Should there be any rumors or any sort of information in the atmosphere that the media may need clarity on?
So I'll say this to you, right? The answer is yes. That's the first thing. The media plays a role in educating the public. The media has a responsibility to educate the public. I think it was the Informations Act that needed to come out that still hasn't been passed. Freedom of the press. I'm in support of that. You can't live in a society where information is not accessible. I think sometimes though persons may expect one person to have all the answers, or if something happens in one school, the minister should know that it happened immediately. Sometimes that's not the case. But I think the only way we get answers, and I've learned this most recently, again, been reminded of it, is through communication. And if you're trying to find out what is going on, it needs to be addressed because people are concerned. So absolutely, I think access is important. I know persons change. That's not my intention. I've been accessible, and I want to remain being accessible. I understand as an at-large candidate, you're responsible for the entire territory. So if you can't get back to someone today, try and get back to them within reason so that they're aware of what you're doing. I know I myself have been a victim of calling some of our elected leaders over the years, and I'm trying to offer advice or offer some way that can help, and my calls are ignored. So I do understand how that is. And I think, you know, you can't please everyone, but at least communicate. And hopefully the message might not be the message that they want, but it'll be the message that, you know, they might be able to understand.
Okay. My next question is, what is your view on the recently concluded Commission of Inquiry?
So I lived in a BVI where I felt there was leadership that you understood. I think we've lived in a country over the last few years where we've understood that things have not been what we wanted them to be, and something needed to be done. I don't think anyone in this country could really look within themselves and felt that things were the way we wanted them. Yes, we could compare them to other places and said, well, we're not as bad as this place and we're not as bad as that place. But to me, that's like having an illness and saying, well, thankfully I don't have this and I don't have that, but you're still not well. And the Commission of Inquiry is an attempt to help us fix some of those things. I am not in favor of the way in which it was dropped on us in terms of the procedure. I think it could have been a little different. I was not proud as a Virgin Islander in some of the representation that was put forth to the Commission of Inquiry from our people. And ultimately, I was not pleased with the suspension or the thought of suspending our constitution and forcing us back to a place where we don't need to be. The recommendations that are there, they were accepted by the government of the day, and therefore we've committed ourselves to dealing with them, and I think we need to follow through with them. Where we find ourselves now realizing some things need to be adjusted, we need to have conversations about them, and we need to move to a point where the suspension of the Constitution is not held over our heads. That needs to be addressed immediately, and I think the BVI can move forward from this situation and regain a lot of the glory that we had regionally and internationally.
Okay. And the next elected government will be tasked to continue with the implementation of the COI recommendations. How would you be of value to that effort? We'll be right back with more Just for the Record after this short break. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. My name is Kamal Haynes. Most of you know me from 284 News, but now you get to see me in a different light on my very own show called Health is Wealth. We have Joel Turnbull.
I don't want you to arch your back when you're pulling down.
Milton McLean.
First of all, right, your footwork.
Stephen Payne.
That was a 9 out of 10. I know you got the service down pat.
Steve Augustine.
You did a pretty hard workout today, so perhaps...
And as you can see, it's actually
you're feeling it.
Alonzo Boynes.
Taekwondo.
Adam Murrows.
I'll speak as if you're an absolute beginner.
I am an absolute beginner.
You are an absolute beginner.
And Seth Graham.
It bites.
It will bite.
Get your water, get your fruits and veggies, and experience a wealth of knowledge about getting healthy.
Today, I am doing coral treatments with Beyond the Reef. Today, we are doing shark research. So today, we are doing whale research with Beyond the Reef. And wherever I go, I take CCT with me because my life is unlimited. We now return with more Just for the Record. And the next elected government will be tasked to continue with the implementation of the COI recommendations. How would you be of value to that effort?
For me, I'm not aware of how far along most of them are, right? It would be first getting in there and seeing where we are with each one. And then again, as I said previously, the viability of it. Does it need to be adjusted? Does it not need to be adjusted? I think moving anything forward, I am very task-oriented. I do understand the civil service has been stretched dealing with a lot of these things, but if the goal is for us to get through it, I think encouragement and even helping in any way I can. I'm not above typing a letter. I'm not above doing research. And it's basically for me hands-on. However I can help, let's help. And at the end of the day, if it's a goal that's necessary for all of us and we buy into it, I think it's time for us to start thinking beyond the Commission of Inquiry.
Okay. And we do know that oftentimes the sister islands are usually feel unrepresented. How do you plan on making the respective sister islands feel represented?
So, living in a small community, I think we're all connected. I have family on Antigua, I have family on Virgin Gorda, and we try to stay connected as much as we can. Antigua has what's necessary, and sorry, Just Van Dyke. They all have a vibe to them. You know, they have a place in the BVI, and in some instances, they carry the rest of the BVI in certain sectors. Again, visiting people and finding out how people are doing is something I'm very big on. If elected, I don't plan to sit in an office all the time, Kamal. I want to know the real realities of people. As an educator at heart, if I can find a young person or even a family and there's a child in there and I know that this child wants to do this with their life or that with their life, if there's something I can do, I would like to do it. So I would say finding out what's going on with people and not making decisions for people, but including them in the decisions that are being made. The road ahead for us in the BVI, as I said before, may be uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about it and figure out ways that everyone understands the process.
And I want to turn a topic to another interesting topic. We would have heard the Premier recently speaking on it as well. And we would have heard a member for the 2nd District speaking on the subject matter as well. What are your views on same-sex marriage?
So I've grown up traditionally. I do believe marriage, when I think of the term marriage, I think of a man and a woman. However, I do understand that persons have choice and they may choose to want to be in a same-sex relationship. I think if that's a union, if it's a marriage, I think that's something that needs to be decided by the public. We have a referendum law that's sat there for a very long time. And I think whatever the country itself decides is where we need to be and where we need to be at on that topic.
Okay. And in terms of, are you in favor of raising the minimum wage?
Yes. I worked at Rotan Wholesale in 1990 in the afternoons after school. Kamal, I made $2.50 an hour. And when I got a raise, I think it was $2. I think it was raised to $2.75. Living in the BVI based on that minimum wage, I think it's $6.50. How can a family survive? I do understand there are repercussions to a small business, but it does need to be raised and things need to be figured out, because if you go to the supermarket and you're like me, I'm still watching that screen. I'm still trying to figure it out. A lot of families are trying to decide between food, electricity, internet, their children's uniform, washing clothes, doing things, and it's too much. The BVI cannot be paradise for those that visit and prison for those of us that try to live here. So it needs to be figured out, but in tandem with our pricing, in tandem with rent control, it all needs to work together. It can't be in isolation, because if you're going to give people more money, you have to make sure they're not spending the money that you gave them, because prices are going up and cost of living is increasing.
Okay. And gun violence in the BVI has been a growing concern within the last few years. What is your position on gun violence, and how would you seek to address this growing issue?
That one is rough. There's a young man who was murdered in Greenland a few months ago. He sat in my office. He was about 10 years old. And he said to me he didn't want to be like his father, because his father, I think, was incarcerated in the US at the time. He was shot in his back. There was a time in the BVI where we could have conversations, and especially young males, life mattered. You know, maybe a catapult with a rock, you might take out somebody's eye if you were being silly, but we would hit each other with sticks and we would figure it out. Now there's no value to life, and it bothers me. I think, again, as an educator and a youth worker, we have to occupy our young people, and we have to show them that the things that they want to do in life are achievable, but we also have to bring back some kind of love for each other. The BVI was not like other countries where we would look at them and we'd be like, they have a lot of violence and they don't feel safe. The gun violence in our country, obviously we have guns. Where are they coming from, and how do we diminish them? But also the way we resolve things. So conflict resolution in schools and after school programs, it needs to happen. I don't think gun violence in the BVI and even violence itself is going to change overnight. It has to be intentional in the way we teach people how to deal with conflict. And there are elements that may not be resolved in our country immediately or the way we would want them to do, but a reduction is definitely something we need to be trying to force.
And as it relates to that, we spoke about gun violence. We also do know that the issue of domestic violence is a very prevalent issue in the territory. What's your view on domestic violence, and how would you seek to address this in the territory?
So educating the public is very important. I don't believe that any person in this world deserves to be treated like they're less than human. I have been in situations, I grew up in a situation where there was domestic violence. So I understand how it feels from a child's perspective. I do not have my personal life and beyond. I don't have tolerance for someone who is physically violent or even verbally violent towards someone or abusive. The government has, and through the Ministry of Social Development, have had campaigns about it. I think we need stricter penalties for persons who are involved in domestic violence, and also for those who are victims of domestic violence. We need to have systems in place to help them find ways out of their situations that are not short-term. because being a victim of domestic violence is something that you may carry for years. And I think in our society, we need to find ways to deter it, but we also need to find ways, and don't forget the victim of domestic violence. We need to give them more than just a tap on the back and tell them you'll be okay. We need to help them have the life they need, especially if children are involved.
Okay. And what are your views on the current sewage issues in the BVI?
You know, walking through town or even going through East End, you realize the stench is still visible at times. You can still smell it. In some instances, you can see it. Kamal, I honestly believe that we can fix it. I don't believe that we have committed to getting it fixed. I think it needs to be assessed again, and then we need to let the persons who are competent in it fix it. I've heard persons say that every year, every 4 years, it's a gimmick for election. I'm hoping that if I am successful and there are persons sitting in the government with me or in the opposition with me, that we're serious about fixing those things and getting solutions to it. Because if you're gonna be there trying to solve a problem, you're trying to solve the problem for the last 20 years. You're not really trying to solve the problem, Kamal. You're just trying to continue to have the problem so that you have something to talk about.
Okay. And how would you, as it pertains to the issue of sewage, I know you mentioned it being an issue for 20 plus years. How would you seek to address this issue should you be elected?
Should I be elected? Well, I'm not an engineer, but obviously I would believe that the way in which we're engineering the system that we're trying to put in place is failing. So those who are competent in that area are the ones who need to look at the issue. And as a government or as a elected official, we need to make sure that the bureaucracy of getting it fixed is not there. Any nepotism involved in getting it done is removed from the situation and the problem itself is fixed. For example, you spoke about sewage, but then water itself, their families and communities in Seacoast Bay, in Hanos, in Purcell Estate, they don't have running water. So I think at the end of the day, we know what the problems are. We just haven't decided that we want those problems to fix them. Maybe, I'm not sure about this, maybe we're not allowing the people who can fix the problems to really fix them.
My next question actually on some of the water issue, especially in the 3rd district that we've been knowing going on for years. As an at-large representative, obviously you're responsible for every district. What is your thoughts on water crisis in some districts?
So I lived in the 3rd for many years. I was a registered voter there, right? And I know how it feels to get home in the evening and not be able to take a shower or having to bathe out of a bucket, filling a toilet bowl with water or whatever. I understand I know how it feels. It's not acceptable. And we live in the BVI where our evolving country, water supply is a basic need and it needs to be done. So again, I'll say this to you, based on what I've heard, a lot of conversations, we have the water supply, but it's not being delivered. Again, it comes down to our engineering. How is it being done? And when are we gonna address it and fix it? I know everything in the country takes money, but we seem to be able to find money for the things that we think are important. And water is important.
Another contentious topic also is medicinal marijuana. As it relates to the legislation, it was passed in the House, but is yet to be assented to. What is your views on the legalization of medicinal marijuana in the territory?
So I think we should have started with the decriminalization of recreational marijuana. I think that there is more of an elephant in the room for us. If we look at countries like Anguilla, St. Vincent, Jamaica, some of them, they started there. I would start there. I think it needs to be done so that small amounts are legal. I think we need to look at the records of persons who have been convicted of it for small amounts. It needs to be removed and allow all police officers to focus on more serious crimes. However, in tangent with that, we need to look at programs for people who may be abusing it, who may need help and that kind of stuff. I think government can make revenue through that, whether it's by taxation for licenses or even whatever that is. I just think it can be done. Our court systems are overloaded with it. Once we figure that out on a local level, then we'll look at medicinal marijuana. I'm a big fan of it. My mother suffers from rheumatoid arthritis, and over the years she has utilized medicinal marijuana in order to help her ease her pain. And I think there is a move for it. I was very concerned when it was said that, the industry itself would have been, it was rumored or whatever, it would be monopolized by one person. I think we need to be very mindful of when we're creating industries in the BVI. We need to look at people in those industries, whether they were legal or not legal, who were involved in them. There's a danger in creating a new industry and forgetting the people who may have suffered all these years when marijuana was illegal. I think there needs to be a role for them to play that is not at the bottom. It may not be at the top, but it can be at the middle. And I think the BVI needs to look at other models, Antigua, Jamaica, and even the US Virgin Islands, what they're doing before we jump and say this is what we're going to do.
Okay. And where do you see, and this is my final question, where do you see the BVI in the next 10 to 20 years?
So come out 20 years from now, I will be legitimately a senior citizen. Okay, and I'm very mindful of it. The BVI needs to be, I would love to see the BVI in a place where we are prosperous in reality and not prosperous just in our minds. Where living in the Virgin Islands is seen as a benefit to those that live here and not just those who visit. Where young people and all ages, whether it's people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and or seniors, they feel like there's still a life that they're enjoying. It may not be perfect, but I think for me, I am mindful of people having the feeling that they're suffering from birth to death. There has to be a period there where the BVI is leading the industries of education within our region, leading in financial services, hospitality, tourism, or blue economy, culinary arts. I think it's unlimited, and I would like to see the opportunities that we have now be things that we embrace for the future rather than saying we're too small or now is not the time. Let's make the time now so that 10, 20 years from now, all our strategic planning would be realized.
Okay. Well, that's all we have for today's Just for the Record. I want to thank you, Stacy, for your time and for also responding to the people's questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, until next time, I'm Kamal Haynes. Hope you enjoy the content. Bye-bye. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here. My name is Kamal Haynes. Most of you know me from 284 News, but now you get to see me in a different light on my very own show called Health is Wealth. We have Joel Turnbull.
I don't want you to arch your back when you're pulling down.
Milton McLean.
First of all, right, your footwork.
Stephen Payne.
That was a 9 out of 10. I know you got the service down pat.
Steve Augustine.
You did a pretty hard workout today, so perhaps...
And as you can see, it's actually
you're feeling it.
Alonzo Boynes.
Taekwondo.
Adam Murrows.
I'll speak as if you're an absolute beginner.
I am an absolute beginner.
You are an absolute beginner.
And Seth Graham.
It bites.
It will bite.
Get your water, get your fruits and veggies, and experience a wealth of knowledge about getting healthy.